Welcome back, y'all. Today is part one of discussing the mind heart body connection. And we will be covering the mind today. And yes, I have a psychology degree, but don't worry, I will not get too detailed or scientific on you. I really only got a bachelor's anyway. But so we are beginning with the mind because the mind is the first piece in this three-piece connection. I have this quote that is actually hanging in my room right now that says, "You must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be." So let's get into it. So everything that we do, everything we think and feel and say is originally determined by the functioning of our minds. Is essentially, that's the word I wanted to use. So everything that we do, think, feel, and say is determined essentially by the functioning of our minds. And our minds are affected by our environment and what or who we are around, society, culture, peer influences, our upbringing and backgrounds, and even our own specific personalities too. And so with our minds, we have three parts. We have our conscious mind, which is what we are aware of. We have our subconscious mind, which is kind of like a memory bank. And we also have our unconscious mind, which is what we are unaware of. So I recently read this article from briantracy.com that says that your subconscious mind is subjective. It does not think or reason independently. It merely obeys the command it receives from your conscious mind. And just as your conscious mind can be thought of as the gardener planting seeds, your subconscious mind can be thought of as the garden or fertile soil in which the seed to germinate and grow. Think of the subconscious as the thing that helps you do everyday things like go to work without a GPS. And so I wanted to focus more so on the subconscious mind for today. So the subconscious mind, think of it as like when you make eggs for breakfast, or even when you like put on your makeup on, like you don't have to use a recipe book to make eggs, or you don't have to, watch a YouTube video to put on your makeup anymore. Like maybe once upon a time you had to look up, Jackie or, one of them YouTube gurus on how to do your makeup. But now you're a pro at it. Now you can do it by yourself because you've done it so many times. It's like muscle memory. And so if our subconscious mind takes direction from our conscious mind, then just think like, what types of things are you meditating on? And I actually want you to think about that. Like, what are you thinking on? I told you in the intro yesterday that this course was going to require some self-reflection. So what do you find yourself thinking of most often? What are the types of thoughts that come to mind? Are they positive thoughts? Are they negative thoughts? Do they shock you, scare you even? Take some time to really think about that, even if you have to pause this video for a second. Think about that. Because it's honestly really important, because we have to be fully aware of ourselves in order for this to be effective. So something I've experienced to be true and learned, over the years is that there are two gateways, that we have that stimulate and influence our thoughts. Our eyes and our ears. They have influence over our thoughts, and we need to be mindful of what goes into these gateways. Like, think about the things you listen to on the regular. Is it gossip? Is it cursing and foul language? Are you around people that only talk about their problems, worries, or their fears? That's going to affect you in a negative way, honey. Think about what kind of things you're seeing. What kinds of things are you watching? Are you watching pornography? Are you watching drama TV shows all day, people fighting and bickering? That's going to affect you as well. Y'all, even the smallest things affect you. Like for me, I actually pretty recently, maybe like a month ago or 2 months ago, I realized that I was like having lustful thoughts, and I could not for the life of me figure out why. Like it just seemed to be coming out of nowhere. And if honestly, like if I'm gonna be real with y'all, like if I'm gonna be 100% with you, like that is something that I've actually battled with for years. But recently, it hasn't been an issue. I haven't had any issues come up. So it really seemed out of the blue. And it was really bothering me. Like, what the heck? Like, what is going on? And I figured out that it was because of what I was watching, y'all. What I was watching. And what I was watching wasn't even bad. Like, it's just, the YouTubers that I follow, like, they all got families. They're on a relationship, So, like, those YouTubers, and, then they have their vlogs, doing couple stuff, whatever, movies, romantic comedies, which I love romantic comedy. So it's always something that I would watch or like be interested in. Movies about relationships and love and marriage and just stuff like that. Like those are good things, but they're things that I don't yet have, things that I want in my life, but I don't have in this current season that I'm in. So it was like I was craving and lusting after it, which turned out to be a negative thing. It was a positive thing, but it turned into something negative. So I really had to be mindful of that. And I feel like it's always so sneaky. Like you don't even realize that it's happening, and for me, like it doesn't happen right away. I don't know if that's true for everyone, but for me personally, it never happens like right away. So anyways, I put myself on like this mini fast, like just banning myself from any video that was like solely about relationships or solely about like love or, anything like that. And I really noticed a difference, y'all, because like when you watch certain things on YouTube, then, YouTube be recommending stuff to you. And so, it'll recommend like, oh, like watch this person's wedding or like this, what is it called? The husband tag or like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you watch a certain amount of like, the same videos like continuously, then YouTube is like recommending you the same thing. So I really had to be mindful and like scroll past that stuff. And anyways, but I really noticed a difference when I put myself on that like fast. I'm putting fast in quotation marks, but it's kind of like a fast for me. I really noticed a difference, and it's crazy. It was so crazy, but just like it just shows how we need to be proactive, and how we need to be intentional. And when I was creating this mini course, actually, this Bible verse came to mind. It's in Romans 10:17. It says, "So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ." And I actually have my Bible open right now next to me, and I actually want to read it out of my Bible, because this verse is speaking specifically, obviously, to the gateways, specifically to the ears, and that's how we receive faith, is by hearing. So this just goes to show that this is true. But I want to read from my Bible. I have the Amplified Bible, and I just want to read from chapter 10, verse 14. I'll just read 14 and 15, and then I'll go back and read verse 17 specifically. So verse 14. "But how are people to call upon him whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without a preacher?" Verse 15. "And how can men preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring glad tidings." And let me jump down to verse 17. "So faith comes by hearing what is told, and what is heard comes by the preaching of the message that came from the lips of Christ, the Messiah himself." So what I wanted y'all to see about these gateways, because basically this is Paul talking, this is Romans, and he's talking about these gateways. So he's like, you know, how can people have faith? You know, how can people believe if nobody hears about it? Like, you know, if they've never heard about it, how are they supposed to believe? Because faith comes by hearing. And he's like, well, how can they hear if nobody is telling them about it, if nobody's preaching? So he's just talking about like being sent out and, you know, evangelizing and speaking the word of God. But in verse 14, he talks about how are they to believe of whom they have never heard? Right? That's one. And if we jump down to verse 17, my Bible says, so faith comes by hearing what is told, and what is heard comes by the preaching of the message that came from the lips of Christ, the Messiah himself. So both times, obviously, he's talking about how can they hear, you know, how can we hear what, how can we hear the word of God? How can we hear the truth? But in order to hear, somebody has to speak. That's what I really want y'all to catch from that, is like, in order to hear, somebody has to speak. And so I have this challenge for y'all, something that I want y'all to think about and something that I want y'all to put into action. So your think action tip for this lesson is 1, think about what do you currently need to remove or change in your life to align with the life that you want. And then part 2 is the action tip. Come up with 3 statements that you will repeat over yourself daily. Because when you speak it, you hear it. There goes, you know, one of your gates right there. And that will help you, and especially if, you know, from earlier, you know, if you thought about what types of thoughts you have, you know, if you are someone who is being honest with yourself and you know that you generally think negative thoughts, then, you know, there's obviously something that needs to be removed from your life. There's something that you can change, and you can speak positivity out of your mouth. You get to decide. There is death and life in the power of the tongue. So you get to decide, and you can use your words, you know, to line up with how you want to think, with how you want to live, you know, and make it more positive to you. So that is your step for today. Part 1, the mind. I hope you guys are taking notes, and I hope you guys are getting something out of this. So this is part 1, the mind. We will be back tomorrow for the heart, part 2.